What's up, everyone? Just on the last, we're bringing you the brand new video. We're going to be discussing what if we decided to ultimately take the ban list out of the game entirely. Tomorrow, there's not going to be a ban list. Everything is going to be a 3. And, well, what would be the cause and effect of that? Well, I predict if this were to ever happen, and it's never going to happen, so don't worry. Decks like Dragon Rulers, Teledad, Forts, and Windups would probably be one of the best decks ever in the game. Simply because, well, they're at full force and they have other cards that they didn't have access to earlier. For example, they didn't have access to Trap Dust. Forts would have access to cards like Trap Dust, Shoot, and Solemn Judgment, and 3 Solemn Warning, and 3 Ultimate Offering, whereas Teledad would have access to Dragon Rulers, which Dragon Ruler Teledad probably sounds really freaking scary right now. On top of having all the other stuff that they would have that they already had access to, we would have access to cards like Fiber Jar and Cyber Jar, which are cards that should never ever see the light of day. But people often think of how good it would be without a ban list. However, people don't understand how it would be detrimental to the game if there was no ban list, because cards that should not exist, cards like Last Turns, Fiber Jar, Cyber Jar, Machiura the Destructor in its current state, those cards should not exist in the current game. Sixth Sense should not exist in the game because they're so unbalanced and they're so unfair for the rest of the game. Even if these cards eventually got power creeped, probably should never see the light of day again. Most of them. Also, if there was a format without a ban list, it would probably be one of the most TK eccentric ban lists ever created. Decks like Cyframes or decks that constantly fall by the wayside would just fall even farther off the wayside because no one would play those decks. Decks like Cosmos might actually be considered irrelevant because the decks that are really ridiculously good are faster than that. Dragon Rulers would probably outspeed Cosmos in most scenarios. Teledad would probably outspeed Cosmos in most scenarios. Cards and decks like Monarchs would be considered too slow because there's a considerable amount of setup even when Pantheism out. Even when they play Pantheism. Additionally, Monarchs would probably actually get a huge boost from this because they have ultimate. Because now they have access to cards like Ultimate Offering or cards like Change of Heart or Brain Control or Snatch Steal. Cards that previously probably would never even be considered in a deck like that because it's banned. However, but regardless of your stances, the ban list is necessary for that respect. And the reason why I say this is because people often have this misconception about how ban lists are bad and that it does absolutely nothing to the state of the game. It's actually doing a lot of work, believe it or not. Despite the misconceptions and how people think that they don't really ban cards that are necessary to be banned. Because I believe that certain cards that would get banned would probably only be banned for a short amount of time and then come off the list. But cards like Spellbook of Judgment or Fiber Jar or Victory Dragon, cards like that should not exist in the game. I mean, Spellbook of Judgment in particular probably shouldn't come back in the game because it power creeps an entire archetype. It makes the archetype very good, and if that's what's going to happen, and it's not going to be healthy for the game. The ban list keeps the game healthy, and regardless of how you think it's keeping the game healthy and how healthy you think the game is, it's at least keeping it on life support. So all in all, I believe that if we just took away the ban list and we just had everything at 3. Which sounds like a good idea on paper, would probably be really terrible for the people who don't really care about competitiveness, because now they have to suffer through Dragon Rulers, or they have to suffer through Wind-Up Hand Loops, or they have to suffer through Teledad because Konami doesn't want to do anything about it. And since Konami has done something about these decks, and then we have moved on from times like that, it really just happens to make sense. Decks like Cleaforts would probably, even then, decks like Cleaforts would probably still be considered too slow, because, well, even though they have access to towers and Scout at 3 and Sacrifice at 3, well, they can't really compete with Dragon Lures, because Dragon Lures will just OTK you, make 2 Draco Sack and make a big guy and just not even care about your stuff. They'll just pop your cards before you even have a chance to. Towers becomes irrelevant under Draco Sack, because, well, there's not, well, because it's just because there's Dragon Rulers. Dragon Rulers will probably make it ridiculous. So, all in all, I would actually just think that you guys should probably be thankful for the ban list. I'm thankful for the ban list because, well, it keeps a lot of decks in check, and it keeps a lot of other potential decks in check, and it keeps a lot of players understanding of what happens. However, I do believe that Konami should be a little bit more fearless when it comes to taking cards off the ban list. Like, we should see a format with, Monster Reborn at 1, or we should at least see a format with Thunder King Ryo at 2, or we should see a format with Brionac at 1 and see how that turns out, or Solemn Judgment at 1. So, I honestly believe that would be a necessary turn of events, because cards like these might have severe impact on the game, but we won't know until we actually understand where that impact lies. If confiscation turns out to be absolutely terrible and bad in the format, then it can probably come back. But since Konami is currently fearful of that, of it being too good, of it being too broken, we won't ever get to see that, because because that's some chance that it might be good, or a great possibility that it might be really, really good. All in all, I just think the ban list is helpful, and I just believe that if Konami decides to be fearless with the ban list, that it would be a good place to do that, and it would be really good for the game if they were a little bit more fearless, so that way we can test cards on the ban list. So, anyway, tell me what you guys think about the ban list below, and tell me if you think it's necessary or not, and I will see you guys next time. This is Richard signing out.